If you're tired of eating leftovers, repurpose them. That's what I'm gonna do in this video. I am gonna take some leftover buttered egg noodles and some leftover pork chops and gravy, and I'm gonna turn them into something completely different and absolutely delicious. Welcome to the Salted Pepper, where we cook for real life using real food and we keep it real simple. And today I'm gonna take leftovers, which I always have too much of, and I'm gonna turn it into something totally different. Because I can only eat so many buttered noodles and pork chops with gravy, and I don't wanna eat the same thing every single day. So I thought, I'm gonna turn this into pork soup. And it's gonna be really quick, really easy, and absolutely delicious. First thing I'm gonna do is turn the Ninja Foodi on, and I'm gonna go on high sear saute. Now you could use the Instant Pot for this recipe, or you could do it on the stove. It would be perfectly fine. You just won't be able to go under pressure, but that's no big deal because everything except for the vegetables are already cooked. So it's really super easy. You can do it a ton of different ways. Stovetop, pressure cooker, you could even do it in the oven if you want it. All right, so I'm gonna add 3 tablespoons of salted butter because we're gonna saute our vegetables a little bit just to give them some flavor. This is a super short pressure cook time, just long enough to soften up the vegetables and to break the pork up a little bit. Like I said, everything's already cooked and it's just gonna be so fast, so easy, and so delicious. All right, while the butter is melting, let me go over the other ingredients that I'm gonna add in. First of all, I already have my pork chops and gravy. You can see I've got a lot of gravy and just a few pork chops left. This gravy was made with onions and a little bit of rosemary and a little bit of thyme and some salt and pepper. Super simple. And I'm gonna carry those same seasonings throughout our pork soup just to keep it consistent because you don't wanna change the seasoning up too much and start to compete with it or fight with it so you have an off-tasting dish. So what I'm gonna add to my butter is 1 onion that I have chopped. I'm using a sweet onion, but you could certainly use a yellow onion. You could use a red onion. You could skip the onion if you wanted to. And it is cut into pretty large size, like 2-inch dice, because I want a nice hearty soup. I have 2 celery stalks that I've sliced up or chopped up about the same size as the onions. And then I have about 1 pound of carrots that are in about 1/2 inch slice. So I'm gonna add those to my melted butter and we're gonna start to saute them just to get a little bit of browning, a little bit of flavor into the vegetables. For my seasonings, I'm putting in about 1 teaspoon of fresh thyme leaves. If you wanted to use dry thyme leaves, I would use about 1/4 to 1/2 teaspoon at most. If you're using ground thyme, I would either omit it or a pinch would be all you would need. I have about 1/4 teaspoon of pepper and 1/2 teaspoon of fine grind sea salt. I'm not gonna add a lot of seasonings because remember, my noodles are already seasoned and my pork chops and my gravy is already seasoned. So you don't wanna overpower it at this step. You could always add more seasonings later, but it's harder to unadd them. Okay, so while they're sauteing for about 5 minutes, let's talk about the pork. So these pork chops were made super quick, super easy in the Ninja Foodi, and I did them from frozen, and they really turned out nicely because they were smothered. So we made the roux, took the roux out of the pot. I pressure cooked the pork chops for 20 minutes, did a 10-minute natural release. Onions were in there. And then I just mixed the roux back in with the juices. You can see my gravy's a little bit thin because I had more liquid than I thought I was gonna have, but it absolutely is so delicious. So now to turn this into soup, I'm gonna break it up into bite-sized pieces. Now I could do this in the pot too, which I might do with the other ones. But while I'm waiting for these to brown up a little bit, I just thought I would show you about the size pieces that I'm going to break these into. The pork might fall apart a little bit since it's already cooked. So once you have the pork put into your bite-sized pieces, go ahead and add it to the pot. Now, this does not have to be just for pork alone. You could use this technique to turn any kind of meat leftover into a soup. Just carry the same flavors through, add a little bit more broth, and pressure cook for a few minutes. It's a quick and easy way to make a very hearty soup and use up those leftovers. One of my very favorite things to do is to turn pot roast into beef stew, and it works the same exact way. Now, I could put in the gravy if I wanted to right now, and I do believe that the 2 cups of chicken stock that I'm gonna add would be enough to go under pressure. But why chance it? It's already cooked. We don't need to cook it. The onions are a perfect texture in there. So instead of doing that, I'm just gonna pressure cook for 1 minute with these carrots and the other vegetables, the pork, and 2 cups of chicken stock. All right, that looks good. And everything smells so wonderful. 2 cups of chicken stock. It's gonna go in there. Pressure lid on. Make sure the valve in the back is to the sealed position. We're gonna switch over to pressure, and high is what we want, but I'm only gonna take this to 1 minute. All right, so once the 1 minute is up, I'm gonna do an immediate release. Then I'm gonna add in some of my noodles and my gravy, and that's it, it's all done. All right, the pin dropped. That means we can open up the lid. Always do that away from you because it's gonna be really, really steamy. Everything looks really good, and it smells so good. Now I'm just gonna dump in this gravy. Gonna give it a little stir. You can always add more chicken stock if you need to. That's no problem, but this looks pretty good to me. And now we'll add in some of those noodles. I probably won't use them all, I will say that. There's a lot here. Then I'll have to come up with the next repurposing. What do I do with all these egg noodles? I'll figure something out. So that was probably about 2.5 to 3 cups. And this looks amazing. Reminds me of my chicken noodle soup, but it's pork. Love it. All right, so very important, we want to test for seasonings first before we do anything else. I'm just going to put a little bit of the broth into a bowl and give it a little taste here. Perfect. I don't need to adjust a thing. It's perfectly seasoned. That's lovely. Now I'm going to add on just a few little garnishes that I like to do. I have a little bit of parsley here, which will carry over from the parsley that I put on the buttered noodles. I also have the inside of celery, the leafy part, and I love to use that as garnishes for soup. It just adds, I don't know, such a beautiful look to it, and also it adds a little bit of texture and a little bit of flavor. So I guess I would definitely call this pork noodle soup. Look at that. It's gorgeous. Absolutely gorgeous. Let's see how those carrots cooked up in that 1 minute pressure cook time. Perfect. Oh my gosh, they are so buttery. That is the perfect cook on a carrot, 1 minute. Oh my gosh, so delicious. That pork is even better than when I served it the first time. Oh, this is so good. You have to try this. This is so delicious. And it's such an easy way to turn a leftover dinner into something that you can freeze for later, heat up for lunches, serve as dinner again, but tastes totally different with some crusty bread and a little side salad. Oh my gosh, Super, super delicious and so easy. So get creative. Take those leftovers and turn them into something delicious like this pork noodle soup.